Since the end of World War II, the United States has been involved in military operations in countries that Congress never declared war on, that the American public was never told about, and that the government denied were happening. Sometimes for decades after they ended, wars fought in secret, operations conducted without public knowledge or congressional oversight, men killed and men killing in places that officially did not exist, for missions that were officially not happening. Some of these operations succeeded. Some failed catastrophically. Some produced consequences that shaped the world you live in today. Consequences that trace directly back to decisions made in secret by people who believed they knew better than the public they were supposedly serving. This is not conspiracy theory. These are documented historical facts. Operations that have since been declassified, investigated by Congress, and acknowledged, sometimes, by the governments that ran them. These are America's secret wars, and they are more numerous, more consequential, and more disturbing than most Americans know. Act 1. Iran 1953. The coup that started everything. In 1953, the CIA conducted its first successful coup d'etat, the overthrow of a foreign government. The target was Iran. The operation was called Ajax by the Americans and Boot by the British, and its consequences are still being felt today. Mohammad Mossadegh was the democratically elected Prime Minister of Iran. He was Time magazine's Man of the Year in 1951. He had been elected on a platform that included nationalizing Iran's oil industry, taking control of Iranian oil away from the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, a British firm that had been extracting Iranian oil for decades while paying Iran a fraction of its value. Britain was furious. They imposed an economic blockade on Iran and approached the United States for help. The Eisenhower administration, newly in power and deeply concerned about communist influence in the Middle East, agreed. The CIA, under Kermit Roosevelt Jr., the grandson of Theodore Roosevelt, organized and funded a campaign of propaganda, bribery, and orchestrated street violence designed to destabilize Mossadegh's government. It worked. Mossadegh was arrested. The Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, was returned to power, having briefly fled the country when the coup seemed to be failing. He ruled Iran as an authoritarian monarch, backed by American support, for the next 26 years. In 1979, the Iranian Revolution overthrew the Shah. The new Islamic Republic of Iran cited American interference in Iranian politics, specifically the 1953 coup, as a foundational grievance. The hostage crisis, the decades of enmity between Iran and the United States, the nuclear program standoff that continues today, all of it traces, in part, back to a CIA operation in 1953 that the American public was not told about for 40 years. The CIA officially acknowledged the coup in 2013, 60 years after it happened. Act 2. Guatemala 1954. The Banana Republic. 1 year after Iran, the CIA did it again. The target this time was Guatemala. The operation was called Success. Jacobo Arbenz was the democratically elected president of Guatemala. He had implemented land reform policies, redistributing and used land from large landowners, including the United Fruit Company, an American corporation that owned vast tracts of Guatemalan territory and had enormous political influence in Washington. The United Fruit Company lobbied the Eisenhower administration aggressively, arguing that Arbenz was a communist threat. The administration, several members of which had personal connections to United Fruit, agreed. The CIA organized a coup using a small force of Guatemalan exiles, a psychological warfare campaign, and air support. Arbenz resigned and went into exile. A military dictatorship took power. What followed in Guatemala was decades of civil war, a conflict that lasted from 1960 to 1996 and killed an estimated 200,000 people, the majority of them indigenous Guatemalans killed by U.S.-backed military forces. The CIA's role in the 1954 coup was declassified in 1997. The suffering it helped initiate lasted 42 more years after the coup itself. Act 3, Laos 1961 to 1975. The Secret War. While America was publicly fighting in Vietnam, it was secretly fighting an entirely separate war in the neighboring country of Laos, a war that lasted 15 years, involved tens of thousands of fighters, and was conducted so covertly that Congress was not fully informed of its scope for years. The CIA organized and funded a secret army in Laos, the Hmong people, led by General Vang Pao, to fight against Communist Pathet Lao forces and North Vietnamese troops, using Laos as a supply corridor. At its peak, the secret army numbered over 30,000 fighters. American CIA officers directed operations. American pilots, some military, some civilian contractors, flew combat missions. Americans died in Laos in a war that officially was not happening. The operation was hidden from the American public through a combination of classification, deception, and the simple fact that Laos was a country most Americans could not locate on a map. Congressional oversight was minimal and frequently circumvented. When the communist forces ultimately prevailed in 1975, the Hmong fighters who had served America's secret war were left behind. Many were killed in the aftermath. Others fled to refugee camps in Thailand. Tens of thousands eventually came to the United States as refugees. People had fought for American interests in a war America officially denied, now living in Minnesota and California and North Carolina as American citizens. Laos remains, to this day, the most heavily bombed country per capita in history. A legacy of the bombing campaigns conducted during the Vietnam War and the Secret War. Unexploded ordnance from American bombs dropped 50 years ago still kills and maims Laotian civilians every year. Act 4, Chile 1973, September 11th. September 11th, 1973, a date that most Americans associate with 2001. But in Chile, September 11th is the anniversary of something else, a military coup that overthrew the democratically elected socialist president Salvador Allende, bringing General Augusto Pinochet to power in a military dictatorship that tortured and killed thousands of Chilean citizens over the following 17 years. The CIA's involvement in destabilizing Allende's government before the coup has been extensively documented. The Nixon administration, deeply concerned about a socialist government in South America, authorized a range of covert operations designed to undermine Allende's presidency. Economic pressure, support for opposition groups, and what internal documents described as making the Chilean economy scream. Whether the CIA directly participated in the coup itself, or whether it simply created the conditions in which a coup became possible, remains a subject of historical debate. What is not debated is that the United States supported and recognized the Pinochet regime that followed, despite its systematic use of torture, disappearance, and murder against political opponents. The exact number of people killed by the Pinochet regime is estimated at over 3,000. Tens of thousands more were tortured. Hundreds of thousands went into exile. Henry Kissinger, National Security Advisor and later Secretary of State under Nixon, received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1973, the same year as the Chilean coup. The decision remains one of the most controversial in the history of a Nobel Committee. Act 5, Iran-Contra, when the secret war came home. In 1986, a secret operation collapsed in a way that could not be concealed and produced the most significant constitutional crisis in American government since Watergate. The Reagan administration had been supporting anti-communist Contra rebels in Nicaragua, attempting to overthrow the Sandinista government. Congress had explicitly passed legislation, the Bolin Amendment, prohibiting the use of federal funds for this purpose. The administration found a way around it. Sell weapons to Iran, which was under an arms embargo, and which the administration had publicly condemned as a state-sponsored terrorism, and used the proceeds to fund the Contras, bypassing congressional prohibition entirely. Both parts of the operation were secret. Both were illegal. Both were exposed. The Iran weapons sales by a Lebanese newspaper, the Contra funding by a Nicaraguan military plane that was shot down carrying supplies. The investigation that followed revealed a shadow government operating within the executive branch, officials conducting foreign policy in secret, in direct defiance of congressional law, funded through covert weapons sales to a country America officially regarded as an enemy. 14 administration officials were indicted. 11 were convicted. Most had their convictions overturned on appeal or were pardoned by President George H.W. Bush. No one served a significant prison sentence. The constitutional questions raised by Iran-Contra about the limits of executive power in foreign policy, about the ability of secret agencies to conduct operations that Congress has explicitly prohibited, were never fully resolved. Closing sequence. These are not the only secret wars America has fought. They are examples documented, declassified, acknowledged, of a pattern that has repeated itself across decades and administrations of both parties. The belief, held by successive generations of American officials, that the public cannot be trusted with the truth about what their government is doing in their name, that democracy, in matters of national security, must be managed rather than practiced. The consequences of these operations, the Iranian Revolution, the Guatemalan Civil War, the Hmong diaspora, the Chilean dictatorship, the Iran-Contra scandal, are not abstractions. They are histories that real people lived and died inside. People who had no vote in the decisions that shaped their lives. People who, in many cases, never knew that the force that had destroyed their country had a name, an address, and a budget line in an American government document that was classified for 40 years. America is capable of extraordinary things, of courage, of generosity, of genuine commitment to the values it names in its founding documents. It is also capable of this. And a country that cannot look honestly at what is done in secret cannot fully understand what it is or what it might become. Fade to black. CIA acknowledged the 1953 Iran coup in 2013, 60 years after it happened. The 1954 Guatemala coup led to a civil war that killed an estimated 200,000 people. Laos remains the most heavily bombed country per capita in history. The Pinochet regime killed over 3,000 people and tortured tens of thousands. 14 officials were indicted in Iran-Contra. No one served significant prison time. All of these operations were conducted without the knowledge of the American public. And